to ask that because I'm going to be waiting around because the conversation is just too good.
Thank you. Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Yergin, so we have a few companies in Arizona. One in particular is a business called Urbix that does processing of graphite. And I'm concerned that some of the joint ventures that are currently being formed in some of these free trade jurisdictions with Chinese partners are skirting the intent of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act, and it's potentially subsidizing our competitors instead of helping businesses like the one I mentioned. Urbix, who is in Maricopa County, who processes graphite. So Dr. Yergin, have you seen these joint ventures? Like, what do you know about them, and what impact do you expect that they have on U.S. domestic jobs and U.S. production?
Well, I haven't, studied them in detail, but the fact is that, the reality was that until about 2019, 2020, people just were not paying attention much to this issue at all. And the way the industry developed is globally is with China being a very important, a predominant player. And so I think the reality is that those entities exist. I don't know whether the specific ones are competing with the companies that you're talking about, but this issue of critical minerals is so entangled with our changing relationships with China, and they're not what they were 4 or 5 years ago, and it's not going to get easily untangled at this point. But you can try and continue to shift the balance, which is what the recent legislation is aiming to do.
Yeah, we've heard that, as Urbix and companies like them try to sign contracts, it's often challenging because of, the joint ventures that exist in these free trade jurisdictions. Right. So it does need to be addressed, and we've got to get this back on track. Mr. Compton, so Arizona's leading the way in resource development that's going to help power this clean energy economy for decades. And the first and only mine in the Fast 41 process is a mine called South 32, Hermosa Project. It's in Santa Cruz County. And this is the only domestic advanced mine development project that can produce 2 critical minerals, zinc and manganese. So, Mr. Compton, I'm sure many of your members are watching this Fast 41 process closely. And what outcomes do you feel will make the process more appealing to your members?
Well, thank you for that question, Senator. Yes, actually South 32 and their Hermosa project is a member of ours as well. And so we've been watching that very closely, and as I'm sure many of our members are. We were very pleased to have mining added as a covered sector a couple of years ago. As you note, the Hermosa project is the first one to be on the permitting dashboard. Ultimately, the whole Fast 41 process was implemented to permit large infrastructure projects in a more timely manner. And so that's what we need to see out of this process is expedited permitting, and doing so, by the way, in a way that does not take short shrift to our environmental regulations. And so one of the things for me is if we can do it for these large infrastructure projects without shortchanging our environmental laws and regulations, why can't we do that for all projects? So that's why the process where with Fast 41, with more transparency, better agency coordination, it's all things that we need in permitting for all projects. That's why it was frustrating. This came up a little earlier in the hearing that FIPSI last week proposed to now limit the mining projects that would be available under Fast 41 to only those designated as critical mineral projects. I understand the Hermosa project is, and that's great, but we've got an awful lot of projects out there that may not be necessarily deemed critical according to the USGS, But I would submit that the entire periodic table is critical.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now we have Senator Hawley.